Hey, Tony.
Hi, Peter.
Let's see. Oh, great. I'm not able to get in.
What's it saying? What's the issue?
Just saying launch meeting. Hold on. I think I'm going to do it a little differently, I think. Let's see.
Yeah, that can be muted.
Hi, Ann.
Hi, Tony. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
Did I hit? I was a little late getting into the meeting last time. Did I hear you have a new addition to the family?
Yes. Yep. Thank you. We had a baby girl. Her name's Amia. And she's awesome. She's great. Yeah.
Congratulations. That's exciting. How's mom doing?
She's great too. She's great too.
Good. Nothing like it.
Right.
I know. And Rocco's doing a great job. You know, he's jumping right on. So
Is that your son?
yeah,
How old is he?
he's two.
Uh,
2 and 2 months. So yeah, but he's doing great. So
good. That's good.
I didn't know which way it was gonna go.
Right.
You never do.
All right. I'm in.
Okay. So
So
did you end up signing on? Because it says town hall on your video.
Yep.
But it's muted over there. Your voice is coming in through the phone, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So just as a test, Ann, could you pull up the chat function on the side of on Zoom there? I don't know if you have it, or if anyone else on the committee.
This is really old. Let's see, maybe. Yep, I got it.
And then just say hello.
Yeah, it comes up privately, Tony.
And is it going to you though, or is it, because I don't see
No, it says
Oh, here it
Tony Barletta privately.
Okay, yeah, so it came to me. Okay, perfect.
Okay. All set? I can close that, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
All right. I only see 16 people on. I was kind of hoping for more.
Well, we're also live on TV.
Oh, on TV. That's right. That's right.
So folks, I don't have the numbers on that. There may be, I don't know, might be a lot more people just watching on TV.
Yep.
Right.
I hope so. I hope so. All right. Whenever you're ready, Tony.
Well, do you have a quorum? Do you want to call your meeting to order and then I can jump in?
I see Anne Marie, Pan, myself, Tom Hamilton.
Yeah, I'm here.
I do not see Judy or Wayne.
I thought I saw a building inspect, well,
Oh, I
maybe,
do. Yep,
Yep.
I see it.
Wayne's
Building
in
department is in, so Wayne is here. So yes, we have a quorum. So I'd like to call our meeting to order. First order of business is approving the minutes from our last meeting. And I think Anne Marie sent those out. Everybody's had an opportunity to read them. So I'll entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes from our last meeting.
I will move, to do that, Anne Marie.
Okay. We have to do roll, seconded by Pan. We do have to do a roll call vote. Any discussion on the meeting minutes? Seeing and hearing none. Roll call vote. Anne Marie,
Aye.
Pan Vanity,
Aye.
Wayne Wilson,
Wayne wasn't at the last meeting.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Tom Hamilton,
Yeah, aye.
okay. And the chair votes
And you,
aye.
Peter?
And I vote aye, yes.
Judy's
Chair.
here.
Oh, Judy's here. Okay, Judy, we're just approving the meeting minutes from the last meeting. Do you approve?
I do, thank you.
Thank you. All right, excellent. All right, so real quickly, I'll introduce our committee members. So Anne Marie Passanisi, she's an abutter. Tom Hamilton is also an abutter. Judy Zahora is from the Finance and Advisory Committee. Wayne Wilson is from, obviously, the building inspector. Pan Manady is a member at large. And that's it for the current members. We did have in the past Steve Viviano from the planning committee, Bob Caggiano, who was an abutter. And we had Kathleen Martin.
Martin, yep.
Yep, Kathleen Martin from FinCom, and Mark Cullinan was a member at large. They have since left the committee. All right, so Tony, you want to open it up?
Sure. Thank you, Peter, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the committee. You guys have done a tremendous amount of work over a tremendous amount of time. And, we're 3 weeks away from everybody getting together for town meeting. The town, I also want to thank anybody that's watching on TV or is on Zoom for tuning in. The idea here is to provide these informational sessions so folks have a warmer feeling towards what the issue is about as they enter town meeting. It can help get us through the article in a timely fashion, which, obviously we got a lot on the agenda this year. It's a 2-day meeting, and we're just trying to get through stuff as efficiently as possible. Even if that wasn't the case, generally speaking, the town, the Board of Selectmen and I feel, these informational sessions ahead of time are always, provide a good service to the townspeople. So I appreciate everybody jumping on. The books, the FinCom books have not hit folks' doorsteps quite yet, but they will be probably the end of this week, if not next week. But they are available online, so there's a ton of information about this subject and other subjects in that book, and you can go onto the Nahant.org website, click on documents, and go to town meeting, and you can click the link there to take a look at all the articles and all the supporting information that the FinCom spent a lot of time putting together. What we're going to do tonight here is I'm going to start by just quickly briefing folks on what to expect when they show up at town meeting. With the, pandemic and social distance guidelines, it's going to look a little bit different than You know, last year's meeting, we had about 80 people there. And before that, we met in the town hall with 450 people. So most people haven't seen or attended the outdoor version of town meeting quite yet. And then what I'll do is I will pass it over to the chairman, who has a PowerPoint, who's going to explain the recommendation of the committee and the work that they've done to come to that recommendation. And lastly, give folks who are on Zoom an opportunity to ask questions. This is an informational session. The intent here isn't to debate the article or persuade folks one way or the other. But it is an opportunity for you to ask any questions that you might want to know before going to town meeting. And the way that I have the chat function set up is that anybody who writes a question in, it comes to me and me only. I'm the only one that's going to see it. And then I will ask that question of the committee at the end, and I don't have to, unless you want me to, announce your name. So you can feel confident and comfortable that your question is, where the question's coming from is confidential, and you can ask whatever question you might have of the article. What I want to do first here is just share my screen. Let's see. So this is the first page that's in the book. It says what to expect at town meeting. And I will zoom right in here to this graphic at the bottom. This is an aerial shot of Flash Road Park. The tent, we will have quite a large tent that we will be sitting under for town meeting, and it will be in the soccer field in this general area. And there's a check-in tent as well. Everybody will go through the check-in process similar to as when you go through it at town meeting into the town hall. If you're a registered voter, you get a wristband and you'll get an electronic voting clicker. I don't know if everybody's familiar with those, but essentially that clicker is yours. It's nameless, and when a vote occurs during town meeting, you'll press 1 for yes, 2 for no, and it just quickly tallies up the votes. So there's no need for a standing vote or a paper ballot vote. It's all done quickly and efficiently through those clickers. The parking will be available to people on the Flash Road side, the Flash Road Park side, or the fire department side of Flash Road, as well as in the Johnson School. And then for elderly and handicapped, there'll be some parking available in the parking lot of the Flash Road area as well. And you'll walk right in through check-in lines, through registration. We're preparing for 800 residents. We'll have seats spread out. The tent is open side, so it's plenty of fresh air going through. You will be required to wear a mask. There'll be 6-foot distance on the aisle leading up in the middle to get to the podium where you can make motions and make questions and comments. We'll have some ushers there to help guide people in and out. We will have staff changing a cover on the microphone in between people speaking. We'll have a huge visual, TV screen right behind the stage and multiple screens halfway back with a delay so that, everybody can hear and see what's happening at the front of the meeting efficiently. It went off really quite well last year. Obviously, it's 1/8 of the size of the people that we're going to have this year, but we're confident that we're setting up a safe environment for residents to come and vote on these important issues. Okay, So now I'm going to share PowerPoint. Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, Mr. Chairman, I hand it off to you. You let me know when you want me to skip to the next slide.
Okay, thanks, Tony. Thank you all for coming. Welcome to the Coast Guard Design and Development Advisory Committee's informational presentation. This presentation is intended to share with the townspeople our planned recommendation that we'll be making at town meeting. Tonight, we'll provide some basic information on the property. We'll show you our work plan, our criteria, and options to help you understand how we arrived at our recommendation. Much of tonight's information is the same as our public hearing in September. We did change our presentation to expand on showing you our work plan and the process based on questions that were asked during that meeting. So slide 2. Our committee was formed at town meeting in 2017. Keep in mind that 2 prior committees had also worked on the disposition of this property. The current committee took a different approach to the question of what should we do with this property. Based on the objective, in order to maximize the long-term benefits to the town, our committee took the approach of using data to help direct us towards a recommendation that was balanced and fair. Next slide. To provide some basic background information on the existing site, it's currently deeded as one parcel of property. And while it has 12 individual houses on it, it's just one piece of land. The houses were built in the 1950s as temporary military housing. They are 2x3 construction, slab on grade, uninsulated, with roofs and heating systems that date to the 1970s. Recently, the town did spend money to replace 2 heating systems that had failed. These houses are past their useful life and require an estimated $30,000 to $35,000 each in improvements just to keep them going as rental property. Also, since the houses were built with 2x3 construction and are uninsulated, they would not meet current building or energy codes, which means any type of improvements that anyone buying one would be more costly, since any part of the house that you touch, you'd have to bring up to those building and energy codes. There's also underground heating oil storage tanks that are dated and could have potential to leak, impacting the environment and costing the town in cleanup costs. The town still owes 1.866 million on the loan, and the loan is due in 2024. 3 years seems like a long time, but it'll be here before you know it. We've already paid $762,000 in interest to date. The houses are rented, but mostly below market rates due to the fact that renters are month to month. The town does use the income of about $125,000 a year in their general operating budget. This number varies from year to year based on repairs and turnovers. So the town usually spends between $6,000 and as much as $20,000 sprucing up a house prior to bringing a new tenant in. Things like carpet, paint, and appliances. Slide 4. We're going to start with our work plan. Slide 5. So here's our work plan. And yes, this slide is busy and difficult to read, so I'll be taking each phase and providing a larger view and explanation. Our work was broken up into 6 phases, and I'll touch on each phase. Keep in mind that some tasks or deliverables may have ended up moving from one phase to another. Next slide. So in phase 1, first and foremost, our committee was established. We spent time discussing our objective and the direction given to us at town meeting in 2017. We put together an objective, a scope, this work plan, and a process. Using the selectmen's survey that was done prior to the 2017 town meeting, some past committee work, Through meetings with town departments, committees, public input, we began to put together a list of options and criteria for evaluating those options. And then we developed a preliminary list of data to evaluate the options against the criteria. Next slide. In phase 2, we started collecting data and information on each element for each option. We met with the haul company at one of the locations. They provided us with a current conditions of all of the houses. We identified others that could help provide the data we needed, such as the town assessor, local real estate agents, developers, and of course the internet. We added and adjusted options to get to about 6 or 10 preliminary options. We eventually landed on 12 options that we focused on. We identified potential issues for each scenario. We did a preliminary evaluation, started to identify options that just wouldn't work. We worked with a land surveyor to provide updated drawings with possible variations in lot sizes. And then we focused on collecting more data. Slide 8. In phase 3, we start to move more towards a formal review of the data we had collected. We began to prepare our findings for each of the data sets, and we reviewed the data we had, and we continued to collect more data. We presented to town committees and residents. We solicited feedback at selectmen meetings and FinCom meetings. We began to refine our options and criteria and make revisions to the list of the data that we needed. At this point, we also began to see that some options just didn't make sense. We started reducing the number of options to better focus on the data we needed and what we would have to study. We assessed drawings to determine if there were issues with any of the options and the layout of the land. And we presented it again at selectmen's meeting to provide updates. Next slide. In phase 4, we reviewed options and any revisions. We identified and filled gaps in the data we had collected. We held meetings with real estate professionals and developers. We further evaluated our options against our criteria. We adjusted or eliminated an option if needed. We did actual scoring of the options against criteria and found some options scored so low that new information would not make them more attractive as a recommendation to the town. So we eliminated them. This scoring was done by each member at home to be as impartial as possible. And then we met and compared scores and discussed why we scored the way we did. At this point, we requested and received approval for funding from the town to hire a survey company to plot out the property and perform deed research. Keep in mind, as we were entering phase 5 and 6, COVID hit and we were delayed in some of our work in preparing for a presentation. We also planned to host a hearing prior to April 2020 meeting, but decided to hold off due to the limits of having town meeting with COVID. Slide 10, please. In phase 5, we prepared our detailed findings. We re-engaged the land surveyor for plotting new drawings and staking out the property. We posted findings, hosted a public hearing, which we did in September, and we reduced our final options from 3 to 1. The committee chose to focus on presenting one recommendation based on our scoring and conclusions. Slide 11. In phase 6, we address any new issues or questions that came up from the hearing. We prepared a clear recommendation for town meeting and prepared and provide the supporting documentation. So slide number 12. So this is basically a list of some of the data that we collected and reviewed. It's not all inclusive, but we looked at property tax information and comparisons, various materials from prior committees, underground storage tank documentation and permits. We met with town council to determine if the government could be asked or forced to remove the underground oil tanks. We looked at leases and rent rolls, property subdivision rules, 40B Massachusetts affordable housing zoning laws. We also had a citizens 40B report, which was basically a very well done synopsis of the 40B law. we looked at Chapter B, 30B procurement laws, real estate census information, 3-year home sale trends, active real estate trends in Nahant, surrounding communities, and the county. We looked at home buying comparisons, more commonly known as comps, and we worked with 2 separate engineering firms on surveys and plans, as well as local real estate professionals. I'm going to stop here, and I don't know if there's any of the committee members that have any comments, anything that I missed. Would like to add anything? No? Okay. All right. Slide 13. So now I'm going to go into show you our criteria. Actually, Tony, you can go to the next slide is just the titles page, I believe. Yeah, go to the next slide. On our criteria, again, I'll expand on each of the criteria, how each option was scored against this criteria. We scored on a 0 to 10 basis, 0 being low and 10 being high. And all of our scoring was done, as I mentioned earlier, each person took their scorecards home and filled them out by themselves, so there was no influence on each other. The next slide. So our first criteria was design and character that fit with the neighborhood. This criteria had double weighting, meaning it was 0 to 20. The committee felt most strongly about how this property will not only fit with the neighborhood, but also the town. So all the scores were doubled. So larger, taller houses, with larger floor area ratios, multiple car parking scored low. This was to address overdevelopment and keep our traffic counts low, especially since this property is so close to the Johnson School. Smaller to medium-sized houses with heights less than 30 feet, which is set by zoning board, with smaller floor area ratios and limited parking, so that traffic would be reduced, would score high. Next slide. Financial criteria was broken down to upfront financial sale and disposition and ongoing financial, essentially ongoing tax revenue or cost to upkeep if it was open space. Each of the financial sections were scored at a 50% weighting so that the total would equal, 0 to 10. So 0 to 5 for upfront and 0 to 5 for ongoing. If we could not get enough money to pay the loan, it would score low. If we at least broke even and was able to pay off the loan, it scored as medium. And we determined that more than $3.6 million was our top score, meaning 3.6 million would score 5. For ongoing side, we looked at tax revenue. Lower tax revenue scored low. Medium was revenue that we would receive from the existing homes, or even income from ongoing rentals. And higher tax revenue scored high. So the existing revenue on the income basically scored a 2.5. Less than that would obviously score less. I think you get the idea. We also took into consideration the cost of upkeep if this site became open space. So those annual costs would score low. Next slide. Moving on to impact on the neighborhood. We wanted to look at the impact of the neighborhood, not only of the immediate butters, but of the Bass Point area and the school. Low scores were given for increasing traffic, more houses, more density, and long-term transition to end state, meaning longer-term construction. How much time and disruption to the neighborhood before any project was completed. Medium impact was to keep the status quo with respect to traffic and density, and highest scores were if we could reduce traffic and density and manage the short-term transition to end state. Next slide, please. The next two criteria are very similar in scope. They show the importance that the committee felt in looking at housing needs of Nahant. Affordability is one item that appeared to resonate with all the committee members. So scoring on affordability essentially was larger, higher priced homes scored low and smaller, lower price homes scored high. Next slide, please. Nahant has an aging population and looking to downsize, but it also has a lack of new young families looking to purchase in Nahant. We felt that this criteria was primarily the same for both categories, and with respect to smaller houses being less expensive. So smaller one-level houses for the elderly, smaller multifamily bedrooms, reasonably priced for young families, and larger, more expensive homes scored low, smaller, less expensive homes scored high. Next slide. Next criteria was 40B affordability housing. This is a requirement by state law, but unfortunately, Nahant does not have a 40B plan in place. The information on 40B, the legal requirements, and the 40B process was difficult for this committee to understand and address without a 40B plan and lengthy legal counsel. Therefore, we dropped it from our scoring. We did learn about 40B, that there are friendly and unfriendly 40B developments. So making a portion of this property 40B, an unfriendly developer could obtain the property and deem it all or a portion of the project 40B and not have to comply with any zoning bylaws. This could result in large apartment or condo type complex. Next slide, please. The next criteria is respectful of zoning bylaws. The scoring here was based on the minimum everything conforms to zoning bylaws, being that more restrictive or limit over development scored higher. This lends itself to the earlier criteria for fitting in with the neighborhood, least impact to the neighborhood. Having a zoning overlay or new zoning to reduce over development scored high, since the town would have more control over what gets built. However, the committee found that deed restrictions could serve the same purpose and be much easier than zoning changes. Slide 22, or next slide. And lastly, we wanted to grade the ability to execute. Basically, can this be done? Will townspeople agree that this recommendation is balanced in the short and long-term financial needs, the housing needs of the town, while taking into account the impacts and effects on the neighborhood and the town? Bottom line, can or will town meeting approve the recommendation to move forward? So again, I'll ask if any of the committee members have any comments or other information I may have missed or. No?
No, Pete, you're doing a great job.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, Peter, you've got it. You've got it down. You've been
All
at
right.
this a while.
Yeah. Next slide, please. So now you know how we developed and executed our work plan, and you've seen the criteria. So now we're going to look at the options that we came up with. Keep in mind there were other options that we talked about, but the committee was able to quickly eliminate them and focus on the options that made sense. Next slide. So we started with open space, just tearing down the houses right away, paying off the loan by other means, taxes or CPC funding. We went on to look at rent existing houses to pay off the loan and transitioning to open space, selling enough houses or lots to pay off the loan and convert the rest to open space. We looked at an over 55 community with a senior center, a design build sample house, basically design and build a house, sell the house, use the funds to design and build and sell a second house, and so on. We looked at more lots, 9,500 square feet, which is less than the 10,000 required for a buildable lot. We looked at every lot being 10,000 square feet, and the remaining land becomes open space. We looked at townhouses in open space. We looked at single family houses and townhouses. Next slide, please. We looked at sell as is with restrictions. We looked at tear down the existing houses and sell 10 lots with restrictions, and tear down existing houses and sell 12 lots with restrictions. Other options that were discussed, to give you an idea, was tiny houses, more houses on much smaller lots, large scale development, apartment type building, or a condo building. Little or no real research was done on these since the committee felt there were too many hurdles to overcome. These all added density to the neighborhood, increased traffic, had zoning issues, and if done by a developer, the upfront sales income would be taken by that developer. Next slide. So now I'm going to take a look at a few of the options in depth, basically compared to our scoring, so you can see, why they were eliminated from our scoring. It'll give you an insight of, I think, on how our decisions were shaped by the scoring. So the first option is to tear down the houses and turn into open space. Open space is always desirable. This scored very high with character. It fits with the neighborhood, minimal impact. You tear down the houses, re-landscape, and there would be a reduction in traffic and certainly comply with zoning bylaws. However, the total outlay currently is $2.1 million for the purchase of the property, another $762,000 in interest. Add to that another $160,000 to demolish the houses, and the unknown cost for landscaping and ongoing upkeep. So financially, this just didn't make sense and scored very low on financials for short term, and with no sales income and with no tax income. It also scored low in that side of financials. This does nothing to address the housing needs of the town, so it also scored low on those categories. And lastly, the financial impacts would make it very difficult, if not impossible, to pass a town meeting, and therefore scored very low on the ability to execute. Next slide. Next, we'll look at rent existing houses to pay off the loan and transition to open space. Again, open space is desirable. This option does allow the town to pay down the loan and other upfront costs. Again, this scored very high in character that fits with the neighborhood, minimal impact once the loan was paid down, a reduction in traffic, and complying with zoning bylaws. The loan is due in 2024, which would not allow time to pay the loan off, so a new loan would be needed to be written at an unknown rate. As a note, we had a loan on this property since 2004 and have only made 2 payments towards the principal since that time. We've also paid, as I said, $762,000 in interest. There would be a loss of upfront income from the sale, so it scored low. No tax, long-term tax revenue, so it scored low on that end of the financial category. We felt this too would be difficult or impossible to execute or pass a town meeting due to the financials. Other negatives for this option include the town would continue to be a landlord for these aging houses, and the roughly $30,000 to $35,000 each house would need in improvements to continue renting. Since the time we did this research, the town, as I said, replaced 2 of the heating units at a cost of $12,000. Next slide, please. So this one is sell enough houses to pay down the loan or pay off the loan. The rest becomes open space. This does give town open space, ensures that the loan and other upfront costs get paid off. It scored in the middle in character that fits with the neighborhood, since the 8 houses that remain are identical, and does give it that uniform look. The houses, again, are 1950s temporary military housing with older roof and heating systems, and limits the owners to updating without very high costs. This option would have minimal impact, a reduction in traffic, comply with zoning bylaws. It limits meeting the housing needs by reducing by 4 homes. There would be a loss of about 1.2 to 1.6 million in upfront income from the sale. It limits long-term tax revenue, so it scored low to middle for scoring on the financial categories. And we felt this might be difficult to actually pass a town meeting. Next slide. This is the last one we'll take a look at. This one is sell as is with restrictions. This option scored middle to low and fits with the neighborhood, again, due to the uniform nature of the houses. This option scored well for meeting the housing needs, both young family and elderly, but buyers would be reluctant to purchase houses built as temporary military housing with a requirement for new roofs and heating systems. The inability to make major modifications without major costs. Short-term income scored high, but it does limit the long-term tax revenue based on size and type of houses compared to newer homes. All of these lots could comply with zoning, but it would create some strange shaped properties. And the ability to execute was high, as this could be passed at town meeting and certainly done easily as a project. So that's how we did our scoring. We didn't want to go through all 12. We'd be here all night, but it gives you a pretty good idea of the scoring that we did. Believe me, there were many, many, many conversations and discussions and debates that went on with our scoring. Next slide, please. So now I'll move on to the recommendation. So the committee recommends the following: tear down the 12 existing houses, contour the land to improve aesthetics, runoff, and marketability of the vacant lots. The proceeds of the sale should pay off the loan and all associated costs for the removal of the houses, contouring of the land, legal fees to subdivide the property, and any other associated costs. The town should retain the following tracts of land: a 15-foot wide path to connect the Heritage Trail to Bailey's Hill, a roughly 30.9-foot wide tract of land abutting the golf course, and the property that allows dirt road access to the bunker. We further recommend that the minimum bid for houses be set at current market value, that the town limit the purchase of one lot per individual entity group, and staggering sales by selling every other house lot over a 2-year period. This will prevent somebody from buying 2 lots and combining them. It also spreads out the sales income over 2 years. This also lessens the flooding of the market. So with so many lots on the up for sale at one time. And finally, through deed restrictions, limit the floor area ratio to 25% for all these lots. 23 is the average of the abutters floor area ratio. And also that no one through a deed restriction could combine the lots. I do have additional slides to kind of highlight the tracts of land that the town should keep. So to show you, next slide, please. So to show you, as I did with the other options, how the overall scoring went. Our recommendation did score highest overall. By tearing down the existing houses and contouring the land, it'll improve the aesthetic appearance of the property. It allows for owners to specify their own type of home and eliminate the uniform nature of the property. This variation scored high in that criteria with fitting with the neighborhood. The financial scored very high, with recent buildable lots selling between $350,000 and $405,000. The upfront income could be 4.2 to 4.8 million. Keep in mind, these numbers were done over a year ago. And as many of you know, the real estate market has just taken off. Long-term tax revenue will be higher than the existing homes. So roughly 82,000 for new homes compared to 58,000 for the existing homes. Negative impact did score low. Yes, there will be some negative impact on the neighborhood during the construction period, but the density and traffic should not change. We're looking at 12 existing houses versus 12 new houses. So there should really be no major difference in traffic. Affordability scored medium to high. When doing comparisons to median sales prices, 3-year median sales price was $620,000. And the median sales price in Nahant in 2020 was 658,000. A lot of land in a new house would run somewhere between 650 and 700,000. Meeting the needs of the elderly and young families also scored medium to high. While not directly addressing elderly and new families, this option gives both an elderly and young family the ability to build the desired type of home at a reasonable price. Since these are all new buildable lots, all houses should comply with zoning, so this scored high in this criteria. And the ability to execute scored very high. The committee feels that this overall a well-balanced option that improves the look of the neighborhood, nets the town income from the sale, allowing the town to pay off the loan and associated costs with some profit, with higher tax revenue on new homes versus existing, allowing for elderly to be able to downsize, new families to get into Nahant while meeting zoning bylaws. The restrictions we are recommending should help reduce or eliminate overdevelopment and possible unfriendly 40B large-scale projects. Next slide, please. So the next steps are basically a town meeting vote. There is a warrant article. Article 20 is asking to accept and move forward with the committee's recommendation. As part of the warrant article, there is a request for funding and funding for legal fees, surveys, demolition, removal of the in-ground oil tanks, and contouring of the land. So essentially getting the property ready for the sale. And we imagine there would be some oversight committee formed. We want to provide current renters notification. The committee wants to be sensitive to the current residents, so providing as much notice as possible, minimum of a year. There needs to be a review and a recommendation by the town-owned land study committee. They'll need to meet and deem this property as an excess asset for sale. Since selling the lots will create a new subdivision, the plans would need to be approved by the planning board. The property can be subdivided into individual lots with clean titles and deed restrictions. Again, the in-ground tanks must be removed, the house is demolished, land contoured, and sold in accordance with Chapter 30B procurement laws. I'm going to kind of answer a question that will probably come up. When it comes to Chapter 30B procurement laws, unfortunately, we're not allowed to give anyone preferential treatment in purchasing town property. So in this case, going to the existing tenants and asking them, giving them first right of refusal, or selling property to other individuals in town. Unfortunately, that can't happen. This has to follow mass procurement laws. Next slide, please. So in our recommendation, I mentioned 3 tracts of land that the town should retain. Those are highlighted in blue. To the far right is a 30.9 foot wide tract of land that abuts the golf course. Part of this actual tract of land has the cart path from the first tee passing through the bottom edge. It's a steep incline, and it's overgrown and would not improve the value of the lot next to it. It actually helps reduce helps us in reducing the size of the lot, because the size of the lot will reflect the floor area ratio, and thus the size of the house. At the bottom of the page is the dirt road that leads to the bunker. This just provides clear access to that bunker. And then lastly, in the middle of the page is the 15-foot wide path to connect the Heritage Trail to Bailey's Hill. The committee envisions a path that with some sort of shrubs or trees that line each side of it to provide privacy for the 2 adjacent lots. Next slide, please. All right, so why is floor area ratio so important to prevent overdevelopment? So the first column, lot size, these are basic lot sizes that we had from some plans that we had done early on. The current zoning bylaw says that you can build a house that's 45% floor area ratio. So in this case, a 10,000 square foot lot, which is the minimum buildable lot, could have a house on it that's 4,500 square feet. And the largest house, or the largest piece of property at just over 13,000 square feet, would have a house roughly 6,000 square feet. So by reducing the floor area ratio on these properties through deed restrictions, a 10,000 square foot property, the largest house that you could build on it would be 2,500 square feet. And the largest house on the largest lot of land would be 3,335 square feet roughly. Next slide, please. So to give you a visual of this, the orange blocks are the existing houses, and the blue blocks are houses with a 45% floor area ratio. Now this plan is actually in the back of the book that you'll be receiving for town meeting. Unfortunately, the color coding, the books are printed in black and white, so I actually eliminated the orange existing houses. So you'll just basically get the larger blue blocks. Next slide, please. So this shows the same basic thing. Orange blocks are existing houses, and the blue blocks are 25% floor area ratio. As you can see, there's quite a big difference between the houses that you can build under 45% versus 25%. Next slide. So this was an aerial rendition that the Hayes Engineering Company produced for us, just to give you an idea of what this neighborhood could look like. These are sized properly with the floor area ratios. Let's see. So the next slide is frequently asked questions. So Nahant needs affordable elderly housing. Why not make these homes available to the elderly? We agree that Nahant needs affordable elderly housing and affordable housing for young families. However, Nahant must follow mass procurement laws, and when selling the property under those laws, there's no way to give favoritism to Nahant. The other thing with developing a 55 and over community, whenever we got information back from developers are in the business to make money, and any developer taking this property would want to make the most profit, which means the town would either get none or very little. The proposals that came in under the prior committees were, I believe, 2.1 million, which is what we paid for the property. We now have 2.1 million plus 762,000 in interest that we've basically paid out. And financially, it just, it was, I think, just too difficult for everybody to imagine that, the town would vote to approve a big project like that. Let's see. This is basically the same thing as mentioned earlier. Can we offer the current residents first right of refusal? Again, we have to follow the mass procurement laws. Nahant doesn't currently meet their state requirement for 40B affordable housing. Shouldn't we be looking to designate some of this property 40B? The town currently has no 40B plan, which would make it difficult, if not impossible, to have a 40B aspect to this property. Not fully understanding 40B, the town having no plan, the committee removed it from its criteria. The committee is recommending restricting floor area ratio. Why? We actually just went through that. So if you want to go to the next slide. Why wouldn't we just sell the existing houses as is? The current homes were built in the 50s as temporary military housing. They're poor quality construction, slab on grade, uninsulated, with roofs and heating systems that date back to the 70s. They also have environmental issues with underground oil tanks, suspected asbestos and lead paint. The town had agreed to at least one prior option to sell to a developer to build a combination of condos and houses. Why is your recommendation so different? Selling the property to a developer basically takes a large portion of the profit and gives it to that developer. In both the first two proposals to sell the property to a developer, the bids received were equal to or slightly more than the amount the town paid for the property. Selling individual lots could reap the town 3.6 to 4.8 million as estimated by local real estate agents, providing enough to cover the loan and interest plus a profit. And why not turn the property into open space? Open space is desirable. However, the town still owes 1.8 million on the loan, which is due in 2024, and has a current total outlay of 2.862 million, the loan plus interest. And selling the property allows the town to pay the loan and covers interest costs as well as future tax revenue. So that's our presentation. So before we open it up to questions, I don't know if there's any comments or something I might have missed from any of the other committee members. Please feel free to.
No, Peter, thank you very much. Listen, that was terrific. That was a very concise view of what went on over many, many years. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, Tony, you have any questions? And by all means, other committee members, if jump in to help answer questions.
Okay, so as I mentioned before, if anybody that's participating on Zoom has a question that wasn't asked, you can write it in the chat room function of Zoom, and I can read that question to the committee. Again, if you, I will not mention where the question is coming from unless you would prefer me to. So I do have a couple questions already in the chat. The first one actually came at the beginning about town meeting, wondering if there's a limit on the number of people who can attend. There actually is not. As a legislative body, we are exempt from the outdoor gathering limits of the social distance guidelines and the reopening phases. But obviously we even still we are requiring masks, doing special distance and in between people, and doing our best to keep it safe as we're the town's trying to balance the health and safety of our residents, but also the need to take on these important issues and the right of the residents to participate in our form of government. Next question I have here is, could the town include encouragement or requirements to use environmentally appropriate building materials, etc.? I'll let you take that, Peter. I'll say that back in 2017 or 2018, the town adopted the Stretch Energy Code, which is the highest standard for environmental benefit that all of these buildings would have to meet. It was part of the criteria for the town to become a green community. So they will be held to that stringent standard. I don't know if a lot of the Stretch Energy Code goes into the type of material, but it does have certain energy standards attached to the material. Do you have anything to add to that?
I really don't. I don't know if we could put stipulations on that I don't know what the effect would have on the sales price. I know that's some of the things we looked at was, when we looked at smaller lots and things like that, would there be problems with selling the lots if they were smaller? I don't know if Wayne's on, if Wayne could speak to the energy, that stretch energy. I do know that, in those energy codes, the insulation needs to be, kind of maxed out. LED lighting and all of the environmentally, kind of required energy code things, but I don't know as far as like, reused materials and or recycled materials.
All right, Peter, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Wayne.
Okay, so this is Wayne, right? So let me address that issue we were just discussing. Certainly, the state building code is right up here with in the energy saving energy criteria. Our stretch energy code takes that to another level, but we would not have the power as a local authority to impose our own requirements on materials. We as long as something meets the code, the actual materials, we cannot impose those requirements on a community. But stretch energy code is pretty tough right now. So I think if anyone's out there thinking that, we really need to make these new homes efficient, then it's certainly that would be the case, because the stretch energy code is very efficient.
Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you, Wayne. The next question is, could all driveways be permeable to reduce runoff?
Thanks, Wayne.
I'll jump in on that. Again, I don't think, because this property is not in a flood zone, it would not be subject to Conservation Commission requirements. So again, I think we might be able to ask that they be that way, but I don't think we could impose it.
I wonder, would that be if moving forward we wanted to do something like all driveways, or that would be a zoning, we'd have to put that in as a zoning bylaw, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not even sure that you could do that type of a criteria in a zoning bylaw.
Okay.
It's not really a zoning issue.
Right.
It's more of an environmental issue, but so I'm not sure what type of a bylaw that would need for that to happen, but it's something to talk about, but I don't off the top of my head, I could say I wouldn't think that we would be able to impose that.
Okay. Thanks.
The next question is there an option that sells enough new lots to pay the loan and leaves some number of lots for open space?
Yes. We did have, I'm trying to think of, we had sell enough lots and then turn the rest into open space. And we would have ended up with 8 houses and 4 of the lots would have become open space. And while it scored, I wouldn't say it scored the lowest. I think if I remember correctly, it scored kind of in the middle. But again, we lose the sale of 4 houses, 1.2 to 1.6 million. We also lose, tax revenue on 4 homes. I believe the number on the tax revenue was somewhere around 7,000 or 8,000. I don't remember quite off the top of my head, but we did look at that option.
Yeah. That's one of the ones that you went through the criteria and the scoring comments on, Peter. So it's,
Okay.
yeah. Mhm.
I don't know if you can find that slide, Tony. I don't know what,
I can certainly try. Hold on a second here.
might be, yeah, it's slide 28. Sell enough houses to pay the loan and the rest becomes open space.
Mhm.
So it does give the town open space, ensures that the loan and other upfront costs get paid off. It's scored in the middle with character that fits with the neighborhood, since the actually, this was, this was with the remaining houses. Or at least that's the way I wrote it. Yeah, we would still lose out on roughly, 1.2 to 1.6 million up front. And then we would lose the ongoing tax revenue. It also reduces by 4 houses the possibility of elderly folks downsizing or young families trying to buy into town. So it didn't score well on that. So it's the way I presented it was to sell enough houses, but that also included the lots. Obviously, the impact to the the design with the neighborhood with lots, because you could, you'd have, you'd get rid of the uniform houses. So we did look at that as kind of a variation of this option.
Right. Let's see. Was there a discussion regarding the staggered time to sell and the potential negative impact to building out the neighborhood more quickly and potentially missing out on the current hot real estate market?
Yes. In fact, we discussed this fairly recently, where, and I think Tony and I also had a conversation about this, where the reason for selling alternating lots, and we kind of said over a 2-year period, but we wanted to leave some amount of time between, selling every other lot. Our biggest fear is having somebody basically buy the lot or buy more than one lot and combine them to be able to put a much larger house. So as far as staggering the sales, we thought that staggering the sales would help eliminate that. But you're right. As we move through this, with the real estate market being so hot, we or the town could certainly compress that down. We also are putting in a deed restriction that doesn't allow the lots to be combined. So that also helps kind of eliminate that, that option or that possibility.
Peter, can I just add something?
Yep. Yeah.
So we sort of glossed over the 40B as one of the criteria that we were assessing the property. But, I want the people, townspeople to be aware that, we not only do we not have a 40B plan as a town, but, even if we did have a plan, there's no way that the town is anywhere close to meeting the state requirement of having 10% of our housing stock being affordable housing. So, one of the reasons that I supported staggering the sales is or doing every other lot is because not only is there the danger of someone buying, 2 or 3 adjoining lots and putting a large house there, but there's also, because we do not meet the state requirement for 40B, a developer could come in with a fancy attorney and perhaps overturn, find some way around the deed restrictions and put up a high rise. I mean, we've seen some of these issues happening around, even in Swampscott. Swampscott doesn't meet their 40B requirement either. So it's not just a large home that I'm afraid of being built. It's the possibility of a developer coming in and developing what we would call an unfriendly 40B development. And, they would have the ability to bypass our zoning laws and put up a building, a very large building that we wouldn't have control over. So that's one of the reasons that I support staggering the sales of the lots.
Thanks, Pam. Anyone else?
On that question?
Yeah, I don't know if anyone else wanted to speak. Okay.
Next question is, what is the estimated sales price for the various lot sizes?
Well, we had 2 lots that were side by side that sold most recently at the corner of Pond and Nahant Street. One went for 350 and the other went for 405. And that was, the houses are built now. I want to say that was a year ago, maybe a little longer. So the estimated lot, values we think will be somewhere between that 300 and 450,000. That's what our local real estate professionals told us.
Okay. Are we able to ensure buyers are ready and have the resources, aka money, to build the house rapidly?
Well, and actually this kind of goes to the earlier question about staggering the sales and lengthening the impact to the neighborhood. I mean, there's no way to determine or predict what individual buyers will do. Some may take time to come up with a design. Others may, may already have a design in mind if they were looking elsewhere to build. So I mean, I don't think honestly I can't answer that. We would hope that if this passes town meeting, we would notify the current tenants and begin the work to, start to get this property ready to sell so that we can turn it around relatively quickly. I mean, obviously the idea is to tear them down. That's one of the other side benefits of contouring the land, basically leveling it out to make it a little more attractive. If you've noticed, the existing houses kind of sit up on a mound. If we level it and it's pre-leveled, then hopefully it allows builders to move a lot more quickly.
I'll, if you don't mind, Peter, I'll just also add that, I know that you guys have spoken a lot about, current renters in the homes and how much time, that's a question that folks have asked is, how much time would they have to find a new place to live or would they have the right to buy a house? Do you want to address that?
Yeah. So again, as far as giving them first right of refusal, we wouldn't be able to do that because of the procurement laws, but anyone who's currently living in those houses would absolutely have as much right to be able to bid on the property as anyone else. I mean, they certainly could, they certainly could build and bid on a lot, buy a lot, and have a house built. In fact, I think we would hope that. I mean, as far as the notification process, town meeting happens in May. Again, in conversations with Tony and other committee members, we would, well, I'm going to say, we hope this recommendation passes, and as soon as it does, we would basically, or the town would issue letters to all the renters to give them a year to find other housing.
Okay, let me scroll down here. The next question is actually that exact question. Are we allowing speculators or can we limit to actual homeowner? Sounds like no, based on the chapter 80. It's actually chapter 30, restrictions from allowing someone a first right of refusal. So Chairman just answered that question. State law requires that we would have to go, chapter 30B, as in boy, is state procurement law would require that we have a fair, open, essentially auction or bid process for the sale of these properties, and would not be able to provide a first right to current renters. But they would have the ability to submit bids.
Tony, can I make a comment? Bob Fields here.
Sure.
Sure. So I asked a few of those questions, guys. And first of all, great job to the committee. I mean, I've only been in town 10 years and certainly have heard all of the challenges associated with trying to do something with this property. So I really appreciate your efforts. And I think you did a great job covering all the bases and looking at all of the things that people have looked at. Having lived through 2 developments surrounding a prior house I owned in another town, part of the reason I asked those questions is I can tell you that the best thing for the neighborhoods will be speed to market, speed to construction, speed to completion, which is why I asked about the staggering and pushing it out. It feels like the deed restrictions are doing what you want from, combining lots and the other things. I hear the 40B concerns. But just whatever you could do or whatever we could do to ensure the houses are built the soonest, that's what's going to be, I can tell you from experience, that's what's going to be beneficial for the neighborhood, because the hammering starting at 7 o'clock for the next 6 years is going to be the biggest challenge. If you could make that 2 years, that would be even better. So that would be my only comment. I'm for your recommendation. I appreciate the work. Makes the most financial sense for the community, and I think protects the neighborhoods with the restrictions you put on. So great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Bob. I appreciate your comments. They were great. Definitely something for us to take a look at. I do want to try to keep the conversation more as like an informative session and question and answer than to, advocate or oppose, but appreciate your compliments to the committee. Next question is there any estimate on cost of remediation of contaminated soil and demo of existing structures?
Yes.
Couldn't it be more beneficial to sell as is and put that on new owners instead of having our tax dollars pay for that unknown cost?
All right. So as far as I'll speak to like lead paint and asbestos first. Because they were built in the 50s, it's suspected. We don't know for the fact that it's actually that it's there, but we do know the oil tanks are there. So 2 of the oil tanks have already been removed. We have estimates to demolish the houses at roughly, well, again, a year old, 160,000 to demolish the houses, a little bit more to probably level the land. As far as the oil tanks go, we have prior permits for the tanks that were removed. I apologize, I don't have the dollar amounts off the top of my head. And as far as contaminated soil, I think everybody on this committee is praying, or everybody in this town should pray that there is no contamination. The Hall Company has in the past done leak testing or pressure testing. Unfortunately, the tanks being so old now that pressure testing would be more problematic, where it could actually cause a leak. So we're hoping there is no leaks. The information that we've received back from the hall company through the tenants is that, yes, there's no insulation in the houses and they burn through a lot of oil, but it doesn't appear that there's any leaks happening right now.
Oh, can I just add as well? I think the committee has been together for almost 4 years at this point. And from the get-go, it was, as a committee, we were pushing for the selectmen to go ahead and deal with the oil tanks and remove the oil tanks that are there so that we, would not have to deal with that issue. And Peter, Tony, correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe Wayne, it's my understanding that we would have to, even if we were going to sell the houses as is, we would have to address the oil tanks before those houses could even be put on the market. So that is a cost that the town would have to undertake in either scenario.
I believe you're correct on that. We don't, we don't have, any suspicion at this moment of a leak. Obviously we don't know for sure, but it's not like we're seeing any type of extraordinary, fast usage of the oil that's in those tanks. And we hope that we don't run into any of those issues. The part of the article that's presented to the town authorizes the town to borrow, and there's a limit of $300,000 there to be used for the costs associated with preparing these properties for sale. So, if we don't encounter any type of, contaminated soil issues, that should be plenty enough for us to have these properties, flattened, oil tanks removed, pay for any type of legal or professional services associated with the sales. And then that amount of $300,000 would be paid off with the money made from the sales of this property, as well as the existing debt the town took on to purchase the property 16 years ago, I think. 16?
2000, yeah, almost 17, 2004. Yeah, and the other thing with the oil tanks is, we keep saying the loan is due in 2024, but the longer we discuss the disposition of the property, the longer we go with these tanks sitting on the ground. The other thing, as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, that the committee did meet with town council, and we did have discussions. He did start to reach out to people in the U.S. government. Of course, most people that were around during not only when the military used the property, but when they sold us the property, most of those folks aren't around. And, at some point, we should continue to press the U.S. government to remove those oil tanks.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just also say that, I've been with the town for 3 years now. We've thought about removing oil tanks over the past 3 years. But knowing that this article was coming to town meeting, we felt like, God forbid there was a large cost associated with some type of soil cleanup, better to do that with, the potential of profit of sales coming down the line than having to, borrow for that in an emergency fashion and then have to go to the taxpayers for that cost. So it was kind of part of the thinking of how to handle, timing of that. All right, back to the question. So the next one is there any estimate on cost of remediation of contaminated? Oh no, I asked that one. Next
Yep.
one is there still zoning issues with lot number 7 being too small to sell?
Well, I can tell you that we don't, while we have some renderings or we have some plans that are done by an engineering company, Hayes Engineering. We actually had another engineering company earlier on. There are no lots. Right now, it is one piece of land. There still needs to be work done on the layout of the lots. There is a possible issue with, one of the unfortunate things of COVID is during the deed research, the company had difficulty getting into the registry of deeds to get all the titles and paperwork related to this property. And so some of the bits and pieces that they've gotten back have shown that there may be a road widening project that took place that maybe was not recorded properly, or what I can tell you, not to make things confusing, is again, this is we spoke to town council about this, and essentially there does need to be a deed clarification, which Dan Scripps said was, happens sometimes, and it's not a difficult thing. The issue with, if it is lot 7, the one on the corner actually has more to do with the frontage and what's required for frontage. But at this point, there are no lots. So we can slice and dice a lot of different ways. And there is enough property there to develop 12 or build 12 houses. I think that's, the best answer I can give is that, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, but there's definitely enough property for 12 houses.
Can I just piggyback on that as well? And that's one of the reasons that we as a committee, find that leveling the houses and, flattening out the property. I mean, it's going to give us more flexibility because, anybody who drives by the current property now can see that, there's the way that the houses are set up is not necessarily maximizing what the lot shape would potentially be. But if we're starting out with a blank, clean slate and a level lot versus, most of the property being set up on a mound, that's also going to enable us to carve out lots that make more sense from the entire property.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pam.
Will there be extra police traffic details with the construction? That's certainly something that the town would consider or require of the construction companies, whatever contractors are hired to come in, be required of them to hire proper traffic details if they're not.
Might I say something? Can you guys hear me?
Hello, yes, Karen,
Yeah, hey, I live here in these houses.
we can hear you.
Can you hear me? And I
Yep.
just want you to know that I've lived here a long time and I raised my son here. I'd like to buy this house. I don't understand why you want to level them. There's nothing wrong with this house that I live in. And I just think there's a lot of families in here, and I realize you guys need the money, but I think they should have the option to buy. That's all.
Thank you, Karen. I think that is a fair comment, I think, to make at town meeting when this article is being debated. As far as, the town doesn't have a choice per chapter 30B to offer any property. If the town were to sell any town-owned land, it would have to, by state law, required to go through that 30B process. So unfortunately, it's state law, and so should the town move to sell the property, it would have to go through that process. How much will it cost the town to tear down the 12 houses and prepare the land?
Well, we did get an estimate. Like I said, it's a year old. It was $160,000 to tear the houses down, and at that time it was to do some leveling, but we've kind of increased our and went more towards contouring the land. So, and again, with the oil tank removals, the article is asking to borrow up to $300,000, and we feel confident that would cover all of those costs.
Right, and included in that is any type of, survey cost, professional services with a surveyor,
Legal fees.
legal fees. We would probably hire a firm to actually conduct the procurement process on behalf of the town. So that cost would be included in that $300,000. If a developer approached to mimic the plan that was presented a number of years ago, 10 homes and a condominium building, would that option be considered, or only single family lots? I think.
Go ahead, Tony.
I think the question. Well, you did consider that, right? That was one of your criteria.
Yes.
You can speak to that.
Yeah. So we did look at the existing proposal, a couple of different things. One is a condo or townhouse type development didn't fit with the neighborhood. We considered it overdevelopment. A developer coming in to do that, and keep in mind, we've already had 2 developers with the same type of proposal offered $2.1 million, which was what we paid for the land. And if we had somebody that came in tomorrow and said, "Hey, we'll give you $5 million," it might be something that would be more I guess worthwhile to consider. The problem is that
Peter,
developers are in to make property, in to make the most profit they can.
yeah.
But go ahead.
If someone offered $5 million, they're going to want to put a lot more than 20 condo units in houses. So they have to make a profit on it. So I think that all things considered, all the things we went through, all the criteria and et cetera that we went through, we pretty much determined that was off the board. It was just not going to be financially responsible for us to do, and it probably would never pass town meeting. That it just wasn't the ability to execute was.
And Marie, that's just what I was going to say. It didn't pass town meeting, so immediately the ability to execute, it just didn't pass the criteria. It's already been floated. It didn't pass. It doesn't make any sense to bring it back and float it again.
Right. And our recommendation is what is in the article. So we're that's what we're recommending.
Oh, can I just add a couple things? Since I'm the most senior member of the prior committee.
And the only place that happens, I'm sure.
Right.
I can add a little bit of background. So if you look at the prior town meeting votes, okay, I think as it stands, we voted at town meeting to look at this multi-use, multi-unit concept, right? The thing that failed a few years ago, the year that this committee was formed, was a zoning overlay so that we could make it more attractive to a developer. If a developer came to us tomorrow and said, we'll give you $5 million for the property, which again, would never happen because they're in the business to make money, not, and they couldn't make money unless they were going to put, 2 skyscrapers there if they offered 5 million. But I believe that we couldn't accept it because, again, the Massachusetts procurement laws come back into play. We would have to go through this entire cycle again of putting out RFP, a request for RFPs, requests for proposals, and it take a process, of like another 6 months because you have to advertise it in trade dailies, and then give enough time for the proposals to come in. So we couldn't even accept money from a loan developer, if they showed up tomorrow morning. That's just not the way that it works.
Right. It's currently one big lot. And
Right.
so you put that up for sale through Chapter 30B, you lose all control of, the future of that property, including the potential for, as you mentioned earlier, the 40B, residential condominium building type development. How much will it cost to clean up the entire area before the sales? Where does that money come from? Quickly, we estimated around $300,000, and it's included in the article. Gives the town the ability to borrow that money, no more than 300,000, and it would be paid back with the profits from the sale of the property. Next question: why can't the town work closely with a local buyer who is interested in buying a whole lot for market value with ironclad deed restrictions and doing a fast turnover for maximum revenue? You just answered that question 2 questions ago. See, how will the leveling work? Isn't that a natural hill that leads to the Heritage Trail? I guess we would hire a contractor to come in and take a look at what it would take to, how far back in a safe manner could we go to create a level property. Each future lot is a little bit unique, and how it would exactly impact the Heritage Trail, it would be figured out through that process, and certainly the Heritage Trail would survive that process or be enhanced in order to continue to have it. Is that okay, Peter? Okay.
Yep.
Answer?
No, that's, yep,
Well,
absolutely.
Yeah, this is Tom. That last map that Peter showed, the aerial view, is preliminary contouring work, shows preliminary contouring work. So part of that has been started when he did the new layout. That last colored aerial slide. Keep going.
This one?
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is contouring on the base map that he has.
Yeah.
So you see those, the contour lines way over on the top right and near the Heritage Trail. That, that shows some of the contouring. The contouring is basically to lower the building house area, allowable area on the lot. And most probably there's going to be a few truckloads left over because all that land originally came from the golf course.
Okay.
So those mounds were built up in the, when they built those houses.
If there was a local developer interested in purchasing all the lots and complying with the suggested deed restrictions, would that be something the town would consider?
Unfortunately, it still has to go through 40B procurement. There's got to be a bidding
30B.
process.
Yeah. And again, same problem is with 30B. The idea with the deed restriction, one deed restriction is to not allow for lots to be combined so that you are, limiting the size of the homes that could be built on each lot. And then they go through a 30B process. So once you, if you were to sell this as one big property through the 30B process, you lose that control. I'm just interpreting for you guys. You guys are the experts. I was just trying to help.
Yeah, no, totally. Again, I guess kind of to Bob Field's comments earlier and trying to get things done kind of faster. I would assume, I'll put myself in that position. If I were somebody that were going to buy one of these properties, put a bid on the property, once that property gets sold, I would be reaching out to the other buyers and saying, hey, listen, I'm going to be using, XYZ contractor to put my foundation in. What do you say we get together and get all the foundations done at the same time? I think you're going to see some of that. Well, at least I would hope. I would think anybody, a contractor coming in to put foundations in, if he does 5 foundations at once, it's going to be it's going to make it cheaper for all 5 of those. Then, so I think we'll get, that to happen on its own.
Will the sales be open auction or sealed bids? I think it's sealed bid. I'd have to double check that. But I think it's sealed bid.
And you talked about having an outside contractor or an outside firm actually run that process just to make it more fair and equitable. And so there's, yeah.
I'm the chief procurement officer for the town, and I'm not going to run this process.
The first lot goes to Tony Barletta.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah. I wouldn't want it either.
We would want to outsource it.
Yes.
How are the house lots selling for $350,000 to $400,000 before construction of a house is considered affordable for elderly or new young families?
Again, we took we looked at the average, the median cost of a house in Nahant. So again, this was a year ago. It was, I forget, I apologize. I don't have the numbers in front of me. They're on my slides.
100,000.
So, you get a lot for 350 to 400,000, another 300,000 for a house. You have a house for 650,000, 700,000. And the median cost in 2020, off the top of my head, was 658,000. So it's essentially, it may not be affordable everywhere, but for the town of Nahant, a $650,000 house is affordable.
Not to mention that, whoever buys a lot, has the ability of putting a house that's, if the lot is 10,000 square feet, they have the ability to build a house that's 2,500 square feet. But if you're, downsizing, you could build a 1,200 square foot ranch that's all one level as well. So, it all depends on, buildable lots are not easy to come by in Nahant. That's why we feel comfortable being very conservative with our estimate of a minimum of 300,000 per lot. But other than capping the size of the house, we don't have any control of what size house the actual purchaser builds, right? So if you're, looking to downsize and build a 1,200 square foot house, I think you could probably get in for, less than the average median house price in Nahant.
And I think that the question was more how incredulous it sounds. I mean, really incredulous it sounds that $400,000 is a lot, is affordable housing. But it just is, right? We will not set the price of the land. That's going to go through the procurement process. All we can tell you is right now, the prices are off the wall.
Right. and these aren't the term affordable. Again, use it with 40B. We didn't look at them as quote state mandated affordable housing. We looked at what is affordable to buy in Nahant, and using the median house prices. That's how we came to our conclusion that this is you can literally have a brand new house. I don't know what those folks paid on the corner of Pond and Nahant Road, but that was a wooded lot, and they spent far more money because they had to clear the lots and do all kinds of work to even prep before the foundation went in. These lots are basically these lots are going to be clear, and so there's a little bit of savings there.
Who would be selling these lots? Real estate company or buy direct from the town? Again, that would go through a 30B process. We would hire an outside firm to conduct that process on behalf of the town. Can Nahant add an insurance rider to cover any potential environmental contamination from a leaking oil tank?
You're asking me? That would be a question for you, Tony.
I'm not asking.
Yeah, I don't. I thought of that
we
earlier.
Probably could. We probably could. I don't. It probably wouldn't be cheap, but certainly something we would. We certainly would look into it. It's a good comment. It's a good question.
Yeah, absolutely.
If there are not lots, if these are not lots, or if there are not lots set yet, wouldn't that make it easier to add open space? I think that was one of the criteria you looked at and you evaluated, and it scored the way it did amongst other criteria.
Actually, we did have one criteria, or one option that we looked at was to basically have every lot 10,000 square feet and the rest becomes open space. And we did have our engineering company take a look at that. The problem is the lay of the land, or the kind of the contouring of the land doesn't allow it, or doesn't. It was nearly impossible to be able to come up with any open space. Like, you can't just squeeze the lots a certain way. In fact, Tony, if you pull up the slides, I believe I left it in there. It's the last slide in the deck. I'm glad I left it for informational purposes, but yeah. So if you look at these orange bars that are on this, if you've ever been behind the property, these are all steep, like drop-offs or steep grades. In fact, the longest bar, there's actually an old playground at the bottom of it from when they were military housing. So part of the problem is to be able to get the full 12 houses on the lots. It's very difficult we need a minimum of 10,000 square feet. And if you look at a few slides earlier, if you look at the different lot sizes, there's a few thousand feet here, a few hundred feet here. There really isn't a way to carve off a chunk that we could say, hey, let's make this open space. And these deep grades kind of make that more difficult, because then you run into, where do you place the house? It's funny. Early on, we had an option to look at, well, what about putting 13 houses or 14 houses? I mean, one or two houses, we would have gone into, traffic studies and things like that, but we can't, we came up with 12 houses essentially, because it kind of kept its status quo, but also because we couldn't put a 13th house or a 14th house. So there was just no way to really carve off any chunk of property that's for open space. Keep in mind, we do want to keep the Heritage Trail as part of the town. Yes, it's a 15-foot wide path. The 30-foot tract of land at the end, and even the dirt road does kind of leave a little bit of open space, but not much.
If passed, will demo start as houses become vacated, or will it wait until all homes are vacated? I could say, I could probably speak to that. I think that the town would probably procure that contract as one contract, with one contractor, and work with them to find out what would be best to either take it, as they become vacated, or wait until, groups of homes, abutting each other become vacant, and then do it in chunks. So that's something that we would work out later on. The residents will be given a year to move out. Then the cleanup demo will take approximately 9 months. So potentially the lots will come up for sale in the spring of 2023. Is the timing approximately correct? We talked a little bit. I spoke about this with Peter a little bit, with the chairman. If this were to pass, we could potentially begin the 30B process immediately. But, with the caveat that homes aren't going to be, or properties aren't going to be ready for another year or two. So we could potentially take advantage of the current market, even though it'll be a year or two before homes are vacated and demoed and leveled and prepared for them to come and start building on.
I mean, you throw out or two. I mean, if we do all the upfront, you do the procurement of the vendor that's going to do the demolition, and the existing tenants move out by next June. You literally could start demolition that early, and as you said, start the procurement. I mean, the 30B selling of the properties, or like all of that stuff can be done in the meantime. While there still needs to be obviously deed research, surveys, and other things like that would happen in that first year. But once that first year is completed and the tenants move out, I think you could pull the trigger, literally as the moving trucks were moving away.
Mm-hmm. Are any of the lots in the flood zone?
No. None of them are in wetlands or flood zones.
And would the lots be sold to the highest and best offer? I believe that's the way it would work. I don't know if the town would have the ability to include additional, scoring grades that a bid, that could be considered in the bid process. I don't know what the town would even be interested in adding to that, but if that didn't exist, then yeah, I think it would just go to the highest bid.
And kind of a question comes as far as, closed bid or whatever. And I don't even know how this would work, but I'm just kind of thinking out loud, probably making it confusing for everybody. But does a person bid on, once the lots have been designated, does a person bid on lot number one, or do they bid on, hey, I'm going to put in a bid on all 10 lots. Here's my bid. And, I hope to get one type of, do you foresee a scenario like that?
No, it would be, lot one would be its own bid.
Okay. All right.
And lot three would be its own bid. That would be up, at the same time.
Right.
I think,
something like that.
yeah, first of all, the lots may be different of different values.
Right. Right.
So I think that, I don't think you'd just be bidding and I'll take like any one of the 12 lots.
Right.
I think it would be more likely to be particular lots, but I don't,
Right.
Yeah, we do know through our real estate professionals here in town that, the lots obviously that abut the golf course are going to be a bit more valuable than the ones on Castle Road.
All right, so those are all the questions. I skipped over a ton of compliments to you all for the professionalism and research that you have all done and the presentation. I think that, regardless of how someone may vote, from the comments I'm reading, it seems people are very happy that you put on this, that we had this informational session. So you guys got a lot of applause there. And that's the end of the questions, and it's 8:54. So you just beating the 2-hour clock.
Oh, good. And I guess as a closing statement, just to the rest of the committee, thank you guys for everything. I mean, it's been a long process. We got heated at times, but everybody was nothing less than professional the whole time. And I'm actually proud to be the chairman of this committee because of you. So thank you.
Thanks.
Well, thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
See
Thanks.
y'all-
Great
see y'all
leader.
in, 3 weeks.
See you at town meeting.
Alrighty. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank-
Have a good night.
Are we don't we have to adjourn?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we do. I was so moved.
All right. Do I have
I
a
second.
wait a minute. Judy Sahara moved, Anne Marie seconded, roll call vote. Anne Marie,
Aye.
Judy,
Aye.
Pan,
Aye.
Tom,
Yes.
Wayne.
Couldn't hear him,
Maybe
but he mouthed.
he might have jumped off.
Delete.
Nobody's there.
He said
and
that.
the-
He said aye.
Okay. And chair votes aye. So thank you, everybody, and have a good night.